Can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. We are back for another big fight breakdown, this time in the welterweight division between Jack Catterall and Ekow Esman on the undercard of Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn 2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on the 15th of November. Chaps, good to be joined by both of you again. Intriguing fight taking place on the undercard, something to keep us entertained whilst we wait for the main event on the 15th of November. So looking forward to discussing it and unpacking it with both of you. First question. Will Jack Catterall ever be a world champion? It's something we've been talking about for a few years now. Really should have been undisputed champion. That fight against Josh Taylor all those years ago now. Was close to fighting for a world title again, but came up just short against Arnold Barboza earlier this year. Now campaigning at 147 in a division that's a tough division to win a world title in. But Noel, I'll go to you. I'll go to you first. Is this ever going to happen for Jack Catterall?
This answer might sound like I'm kind of hoping more than expecting, but I'm gonna say yeah, he will. You know, as you say, he's proved that he's at that level. He should have been world champion already. Should have been undisputed world champion. Didn't get the nod, but you know, he proved that he can mix it at that level. And you know, I felt so bad for him. You know, he was so close to getting another shot and just fell short against Arnold Barboza. But I think obviously he needs to win this fight. This is absolute must win for Jack Catterall against Ekow Esman. But you look the landscape of the division. Okay, you have a fight we're kind of going to discuss maybe a little bit later in the video. Haney Norman Jr. Um, you've got Jerron Ennis is gone, which kind of frees up it gives a lot more favourable matchups with Ennis gone because you know I think he would have been close to unbeatable at 147 and probably at 154. And then you've got Paul's main man Lewis Crocker, which would be an interesting fight. You know, Lewis Crocker and Jack Catterall, and both men would be looking at that thinking that it's absolutely winnable. But if Jack Catterall has anything left, you know, he is kind of maybe running out of time a little bit, but I can definitely see him either beating Lewis Crocker, sorry Paul, or else getting his hands on a vacated belt, or you know, if belts become fragmented in that way, or you know, I think he is capable of getting his hands on a world title there, and I hope he does because he deserves it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like Jack Catterall, I don't think there's any question over whether he was good enough to be world champion. He really should have become world champion when he the first fight against Josh Taylor. Um, it's more of a case of like where is he at now in his career and does he still have enough to be a world champion at 147? And I think Ekow Esman's a good measuring stick for that. Paul, what are your thoughts? Are we ever going to be here kind of talking about Jack Catterall as a world champion, or is it simply not meant to be?
Yeah, I completely see where Niall's coming from, and he definitely has the ability to do so. And as you have mentioned, without going over all ground, should have been already. But it's just one of those things. Something I can't really put it down to anything more than a gut feeling of like something just tells me he's just going to fall short and might be known as a nearly man, which sounds really harsh because he is a world class fighter. But like you look, he got so close again, then obviously fell short against Barboza. I mean, I don't think Barboza is all that, to be honest. So maybe did we have Jack Catterall have him on a higher pedestal than perhaps maybe we should have? Did we get a little bit carried away? Was it just an off night? I think the change of trainer will be interesting here. I know a lot of mixed opinions on Boots Ennis's dad as a coach, so depends. Like I think thought he was working really well with Jamie Moore, Jack Catterall, but obviously wants to change. Whether that'll be beneficial to him or not, and whether that will help him become world champion remains to be seen. But yeah, Niall made a good point about the welterweight division. If this is what Catterall is going to stay at, if he's done with the super lightweight division, there are favourable fights for him. Like I would back Jack Catterall to beat Mario Barrios. Um, I would say, like Niall said, a lot of people would fancy him to beat Lewis Crocker. Obviously not me, but a lot of people would. And then yeah, I think the Haney Norman Jr. winner. I think Norman Jr. looks like a really strong, solid fighter. But again, I think there's still having lots of questions around him. Devin Haney, he's not a full welterweight for me. Gun shy in his last fight, obviously, kind of had that damaging defeat to Ryan Garcia as well. Obviously being overturned in no contest. But I look at these guys and I think Jack Catterall can definitely beat these guys on his day. But I don't know, something's telling me he's not gonna ever get that world title belt around his waist.
No, I think it's one of those like it's worth pointing out. If he does win this fight, that doesn't mean he's going to fight for a world title next or in or in the fight after that. It just felt like when he was kind of on that run with Matchroom after the Josh Taylor loss, he was kind of beating good fighters, Josh Taylor in their rematch Regis Prograis, but that those fights didn't lead to a world title. And then the final obstacle, kind of a lost what was a close point decision to Arnold Barboza, who then went on to face Teofimo Lopez, 3 months later, very, very shortly afterwards. So I can imagine why he is annoyed. Ekow Esman, chaps, Paul, I'll stick with you. What level do you consider him to be at? He's defended the British title so many times. We can debate how big a win that was over Josh Taylor back in May in Glasgow. Josh Taylor, a faded fighter, but still a good fighter. And you could argue that it's just that Josh Taylor win, which is that one win that's above British title level, you could argue. But I'll let you have your own opinion. What level do you consider Ekow Esman to be at?
Yeah, you gotta say he's like seasoned at British level for sure. Um Defended that Lonsdale belt numerous times, as you mentioned, beat some good solid British fighters along the way. Again, that Taylor one, yeah, you're right. You kind of look at it in a few ways. Taylor passed his best and so on and so forth, but you still have to beat him. Away from home as well. I think Taylor had a fairly fast start from what I can remember, and Essuman weathered the storm and came on really strong. He's got a great engine. I think he is that level, I'd say he's a European level. I think there's been worse European champions. I have him kind of around that. And I think there's not a whole lot of difference between European and fringe world level for me. I'm going to sit here and say that Ekow Essuman has the makings of a world champion. I'm not, but I think that he's certainly a capable fighter, can cause a lot of fighters problems. I think he could cause Jack Catterall a few issues as well, potentially, on November 15th as well. And yeah, he's been a career long welterweight. So yeah, I think he's a tough nut to crack. In terms of his level, yeah, I'd put him around that European fringe, but not just quite world.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, look, as the saying goes, you can only kind of beat what's in front of you. Had a close points lost to Harry Scarf, who's a tricky fighter to beat
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, and as beaten everyone else. I don't like talking about fighters' ages too much, but at the age of 36, you have to question, is he past his best or not? He's someone who's incredibly fit, and I think that's kind of someone who clearly lives the life, and that's kind of contributed towards his longevity. He also turned over late, turned over the edge at the age of 27, I believe. One thing I would say is if I was at that weigh-in in Glasgow against Josh Taylor, and I do think it's a struggle for him now to make welterweight. You could tell in his face was kind of quite drawn, and although he's not, I wouldn't say he was kind of a big guy. I just think he's been making that weight for so long now. I'd question how many fights he can be effective at welterweight. How many fights are left from that welterweight? No, give us your thoughts. Is Ekow Esman, is he kind of fringe world level? Is he British level? Where is he at for you?
I think I'm going to agree totally with what Paul says. I think he's a very, very good British level, Commonwealth level fighter, and he's a solid. I think European level would be his ceiling. To be honest with you, he's not, especially at this stage of his career, as you say, Elliot, with his age. He'll do very well to kind of break above that ceiling, but I do think that's a ceiling, which is brilliant. It's a brilliant career. Anybody would, most fighters would kind of love to have the career Ekow Esman has had. Numerous defenses of the British title, and really good domestic wins. But yeah, I think a good European level fighter is his ceiling, and yeah, the win against Josh Taylor, it is a tricky one to gauge, isn't it? Like I would have picked Josh Taylor before that fight, if I remember correctly, but he was definitely very past his best. You have to say, Josh Taylor. I don't know if shot would be the word for him, but he definitely wasn't the Josh Taylor that he once was. But credit to him, as Paul said, you still have to go there and win, and especially in Scotland, his opponent in this fight knows how hard it is to beat Josh Taylor in Scotland, so you have to hand it to him there for that one. But yeah, I think Ekow Esman achieved all he's going to achieve. I don't think he's going to hit the heights of a fringe world level or a world champion. I really don't. It'd be an incredible tournament for the Bucks if he ended up getting his hands on a world title, although nobody would begrudge him that, I suppose.
Yeah, look, we'll see. Look, I think he's kind of still had a good career, all those defense of the British title, and maybe he's at his peak now. Maybe kind of now is the time for Ekow Esman to fight for a world title in the next 12 months. But yeah, we'll see. Look, I think it's an intriguing undercard fight, isn't it, on the 15th of November? Um, I'm in the middle. I'm aware I'm kind of in the middle of kind of an Irish sandwich here, gents. So I'm going to tread carefully, but in terms of the welterweights that Britain and Ireland have to offer. Where do these two rank? Obviously, Lewis Crocker, Paddy Donovan obviously had their rematch for a world title recently. I'll leave it up to you if you kind of want to count Conor Benn as a welterweight. He's obviously not forward welterweight for some time now. Harlem Eubanks another contender, but are these the best two? Is Jack Catterall the best welterweight to offer? Paul, I'll go to you. Where do these two rank for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky to gauge with Catterall because he's only had those one as a two fights at welterweight. So I think yeah, I think well, if you're judging him off his best wins at super lightweight and stuff and his performances, yeah, you got to have him right up there. Like as we've alluded to, I do have him above potentially Ekow Essuman and obviously he beat Harlem Eubank, so you got to have him above them. You look at Donovan and Crocker, like for me, you have to have Crocker as the number one because he does have that belt. I know people can say what they want about how he got that, and even in the second fight, it was a close fight. So you got to have him and Donovan as a fairly like up there. I think Jack Catterall is up there with them. I'll have him just behind Lewis Crocker, maybe just ahead of Paddy Donovan. But yeah, in terms of in welterweights from the UK and Ireland, I think he's definitely right up there. But I still think you have to have Crocker number one because he has a world title.
Yeah, no, surely you're going to disagree with that. I know you thought Donovan won the rematch. What's your opinion?
I did I did think Donovan won the rematch, but it is hard to kind of disagree. Unfortunately, I don't disagree in terms of the fact that you have to have Crocker there because he is the champion. But I'd actually have, in terms of UK and Ireland welterweights, I'd actually have Donovan, Crocker, and Catterall on kind of an even keel. We've seen Crocker and Donovan fight. It's one of those that it could be a controversial if they fought 99 times out of 100. It could be a controversial kind of end, and they could be that level. But Jack Catterall, on his day, if Jack Catterall has anything left, he could beat one or even both of them. I just think he is that talented. I know he gets a lot of flack for his style, but it's effective in what he does. And yeah, Paddy Donovan, it's not just the bias coming out, but Paddy Donovan is supremely talented fighter. Very well could have been world champion himself. Still could be. I just think talent wise, those three are the best that the UK and Ireland has to offer. And then under that, the level under that, you're looking at Harlem Eubank, I think, is sitting just underneath that. I think Eubank is a talent himself. Conor Ben, as you say, I'm not even going to get too much into Conor Ben. He hasn't fought in welterweight in so long, and he hasn't proved either that he's at the level of a Lewis Crocker, a Paddy Donovan, Jack Catterall, Harlem Eubank, those type of names. So, I'm not just gonna lump him in there just because of his last name. I'm gonna just, wait till he proves that he belongs there on merit. But yeah, Catterall, Crocker, Donovan for me are the three that I'm really struggling to split.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's a tricky one. We hope we see some of these. We hope we see some of these fights. Look, possibly Jack Catterall, Lewis Crocker could be a fight to be made. Both matchroom fighters. Jack Catterall ranked in the top 15 in the IBF as well. I know Lewis Crocker's probably in talks right now over what his first defense is going to look like. So yeah, we'll see. Look, I think that we love domestic grudge matches, or whether it's kind of an Irish fighter against an English fighter. It's always entertaining in the build up as well. Last question before we do some predictions, gents. Does the winner fight for a world title? As we kind of mentioned, Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney are fighting each other, what, a week later? As boxing is, it's kind of unclear what could happen next. But Ekow Esman is ranked very highly with the WBO, and Jack Catterall's in the top 10 as well. So you'd think the winner of this fight could be a real contender to fight for a world title next. But what are your guys' thoughts? Well, does the winner fight for a world title next? No, I'll stick with you here.
I think so. I think, I won't give my prediction away just yet, but I think either man with a win here would deserve it. With the run Essuman has been on, the Josh Taylor win, and Jack Catterall, we're saying that for his whole career, basically, since the Josh Taylor first fight, that his next fight has to be for a world title, and it hasn't materialized. So, hopefully for his sake, he won't fall at the last hurdle again. But yeah, I think, as you say, the timings line up with the Haney fight the week after. I just think for the sake of boxing fans. Uh, can you imagine a Devin Haney, Jack Catterall fight? Could be a contender for one of the worst fights of all time. To be honest with you, it's not a fight I'd look forward to. So for a boxing fan's sake, you'd have to hope Brian Norman Jr. would win that. But yeah, I think absolutely either man would deserve a world title shot here, if
Yeah.
they won.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, it would make sense to considering you're getting these two guys who are both ranked highly. They are both facing each other when they don't have to. It would make sense for the winner to be awarded with. And as you've said now, the timings match up nicely as well. So you'd like to think possibly April or May these guys can fight each other. Paul, what about yourself? Does the winner fight for a world title next in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they deserve to. Whoever wins this, I think they definitely deserve to. Again, without going over old ground. Timeline wise, it's perfect to fight the Norman Jr. Haney winner. As you mentioned, both fairly highly ranked in the WBO. You'd imagine that whoever wins this will be go further up the rankings, up to the near the top three, maybe of the WBO rankings. So then they're well in with the shout for the next defensive, whether it be Haney or Brand Norman. Yeah, so that makes sense. Then you do look at it as well, as you mentioned. If it's Catterall, for example, who wins as a matchroom fighter, you think, well, okay, it's easy to make the Crocker fight. Whether or not by the time this fight has happened, whether or not Crocker has his next opponent, whether he fights before the end of the year, whether then if he's to win that, then they make the all matchroom affair with Catterall. If he's to win, there's so many if buts and maybes, of course. But yeah, I do think that the winner of Catterall Essuman on November 15th definitely deserves to fight for a welterweight world title. And yeah, I'm optimistic that that should and will happen.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I think that's what should happen. I don't feel like there's any reason why there's no reason why that shouldn't happen, but we shall see. All right, chaps. As always, we'll finish off with some predictions. The bookies are struggling to split this one. As things stand, I'm looking at Jack Catterall 1-2 just to win. Ekow Esman 13-8. The bookies see this as a competitive fight that is tough to call. Now I'll go to you first. What's your prediction for this fight, please?
I think that it's mad how the bookies have it this close. I can't see any way that Echo Esman wins this fight, to be honest with you. I know that might sound harsh, but I just think Jack Catterall is levels above. As I say, Echo Esman, a really good British level, European level fighter, which is great, but Jack Catterall has proved that he's world class.
Mm.
Beating Josh Taylor both times, but the first time, Regis Prograis, even Linares, these are names that Edgar Esman hasn't proved yet that he's near. So it all depends for me what Jack Catterall has left, and I don't think that he's shot, or I don't think he's that past his best that Edgar Esman could beat him. So I'm going for a convincing Jack Catterall points win here. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Echo Esman wins this fight, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I think bookies look at records and they look at recent form when it comes to providing odds, and they look at maybe Jack Catterall lost a fight earlier this year. Ekow Esman had a big win earlier this year, and I wonder if that's been looked into a little bit too much. Paul, What are you going for?
Yeah, I agree with who Niall's going with there. I think it maybe might be a little more competitive. I'll give Echo Essuman a few rounds, but I don't think there'll be any question over who wins. I'm going Jack Carroll to win. I'm going for him to win on points as well. I think I can't see him stopping Ekow Essuman, to be honest. So yeah, I'm leaning towards a points victory, something like a 9-3 Catterall, or if it's something along those lines. Fairly convincing, to be honest, but I think Esman will win a couple of rounds. I don't think it'll be a shutout.
Yeah, I think odds on Catterall to win on points are 4-5, by the way, so almost evens there. I think my thoughts are that fight Esman had against Josh Taylor at the end of 6 rounds, Esman arguably had only won 1 round. And then in the last 6 rounds, Josh Taylor just basically didn't have anything left. His gas tank was completely gone, whereas Esman has a fantastic gas tank. So Esman arguably won all of those final 6 rounds. So you can't get the fact I can't get that out of my head that 6 rounds in, Esman was clearly losing that fight. And Jack Catterall as well. No, I think he's got quite a bit left. I really do. I think the Barboza fight was his final fight at 140 in the sense that he was finished at that weight. He was not the fighter he was at that weight. And the fight against Harlem Eubank was dreadful, but I think I think he's still quite effective when what he was doing, and arguably won every round there as well. So yeah, I will be boring, and I'll join both of you. I'll go for Jack Catterall to win this point to win this by a convincing points decision, and then I hope he fights for a world title in 2026 because he deserves to. Paul, Niall, thank you both very much for your time. Thank you for your opinions and your predictions as well. Of course, I will speak to both of you again very soon.
Cheers. Take care.